Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I'm once again joined by the incredibly intelligent Sai.
Hello, this is Sai joining the incredibly intelligent Lucid on another turn of the tournament finals.
And this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you have been waiting for. You have been waiting for the start of the Vaettiheim War. We really have not seen what Vaettiheim is capable of yet. We know the player's good, we know the nation's good, but so far, they've been trying to not stick their head up too high and get themselves in trouble, but apparently casting Illwinter was too much for any of these very experienced players to stand, and I don't blame them. This is going to be it. Look at this. Look at all the action we've got coming for you this turn. The only common theme is that there's a blue flag on this side for most all the cases.
So. Yeah, Vaettiheim's doing a little bit of their own posturing. We can see that a lot of their targets, at least in the magic phase, are focused on Xibalba, which is kind of interesting, but that's also kind of the more predictable of their neighbors.
Right.
Because of how far Xibalba is behind in research, you kind of know what's coming from them, and the Ocelotls are not stealthy. So Vaettiheim can see where these large Xibalban armies are, and outside of reinforcements being caught en route, he shouldn't expect too many surprises from the areas in which he's launching an attack, which makes him actually, ironically, one of the safer players to attack, in spite of the fact that this is like a nation that has ubiquitous stealthy flying mages.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start off here with some of the messages. We've got a message here from Tianchi. Apparently, Panzerbalba, Gath, and Gartha are ganging up on Vaettiheim. I can't say the goblins don't deserve it. Illwinter is really annoying, and while we can protect our mage corps easier than most, it's ruinous for our ability to use ancestor vessels and armies. This concern is a major factor in why we've been summoning celestial soldiers despite the quite high gem cost. Our ancestor vessel armies are very vulnerable in a frozen world. I've been fine with the anti-Arethia Grand Coalition I would have been fine with an anti-Arethia coalition from those grand powers, partially because he would have a lot to gain from that. But our opinion is that in the next gang up, this next gang up will make Gath too strong. Without intervention from the other powers, Vaettiheim told us they'd be unable to defend the Utgard region given the geography. And the fact that Gath is already our largest rival, I think, with the giant mages and extremely massive sacreds, both demons and not, this war seems like a very bad outcome for us if we don't also grow. But we're not invited to the party, nor do we want to invade Vaettiheim as part of the 5v1.
Yeah, they also have a very small border, so they would have a hard time actually making gains without getting in the way of Pangea.
Yeah. I swear we're not addicted to war. We really wanted to just turtle a bit, but we cannot allow this war to proceed. So we're ending our nap with Pangea just a couple turns after signing it. And Gath has ended his nap with us in response, but he and Gath don't really have much of a border. They've got a tiny border where Arco used to be.
Yeah, it's interesting that Gath is sticking with this alliance, but on the other hand, it's very clearly been working well for him.
Yeah, for everybody who's been wondering, like, okay, how strong is the Pan-Gath alliance? This is a great indicator of that. Because Gath, who was neutral in the previous conflict, he's going to be knee-deep in goblins in just a minute and not going to have a lot of resources to do other things. He ends his nap with Tianchi just because Tianchi's attacking Pangea, who Pangea has a claim to be position 1 right now.
I think that, well, first of all, I think that, like, if you're looking at the map and taking into account the amount of blood income that Gath is pulling in, until Kenji actually gets that level that you're talking about, Arcane Nexus, Gibson,
right.
Nature County, something like that, Gath is pretty clearly ahead in terms of their economy.
Yeah, I would agree.
The second thing is that I don't think that Gath is ending their nap to, start focusing on actually fighting TNG and rescuing Pangea, but they need to have their nap ended in order to be able to assist at all. So Gath is probably going to be able to just provide, maybe a little bit of magic phase overwatch, remote attacks, that sort of thing, without actually making a major commitment to fighting TNG themselves. But it is, as you said, showing just how strong that alliance is.
Yeah,
that it's almost like an automatic consideration.
Yeah, I think this is mostly a show of alliance. Like sure, Gath's going to be able to provide some air support and some things like that. And like you said, it's not going to be a huge military engagement, but it's more like just letting people know that, like, hey, Pan and I, we're a thing. You mess with one of us, you mess with both of us.
And that's also very valuable because it means that people can't just go after you if they think that they can win a duel.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty strong. And honestly, I think it's hard to say. I think, like you said, Gath is probably technically position 1 right now. But just with the amount of gems that Pangea must be saving, I'm kind of feeling Pangea position 1 personally. And we should check. I think Pangea is also broken into vampires. We can go take a look at it this turn, see if we see any thralls. But I think they're also getting a blood economy.
The amount of blood that they can get by this phase, though, is not going to be that impressive unless they get like a big discount site. Just because the lack of recruitables is just massive in terms of the difference in scale.
All right, so we have this. This is going to be, this site right here is going to be at least 5 vampires, probably more like 6 or 7. Is that the only one?
I didn't see thralls elsewhere. Like we did point out that they'd been doing that, and we knew that they'd been buying blood slaves earlier.
Yeah. Okay. So it's probably just like 7.
If you have that few blood mages, I'm more inclined to spread them out, because even though, like, in terms of like gold to gem efficiency, it makes sense to try to concentrate. But when you have that few blood hunters, I do think that you actually want to split them between more different provinces just to try to eke out as many slaves as you can.
Yeah, and they're not doing a very good job. 92 unrest is going to, that also gives us an indication of how many are possibly here, because presuming a lot of this stuff is patrolling. A lot of the harpies and thralls are patrolling, and there's still 92 unrest here. Jesus Christos. You know, there's probably a decent number of blood mages. But
it's very hard to tell. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a matter of rolls.
Yeah.
Where you get really good blood rolls and really poor patrol rolls, or things along those lines. And you can see very major spikes anytime you're doing serious blood hunting.
And that being said, too, you also did, you know, like you were saying, the higher this unrest number is, the less efficient your mages are at blood hunting. So, you know, stacking them all up in one province, this part of how they become less efficient. So.
Yeah, there's something to be said for stacking in that the gold that you lose for unrest is like harder the lower the unrest is. So like going from 0 to 10 is much bigger than going from like 20 to 30 and so on.
Yeah.
So in terms of like your economic efficiency, it's very often worth stacking blood hunting fairly high, just because it reduces the effect on your gold economy. Like I mentioned, the exception here is basically that if you don't have that many blood mages, then you're willing to basically give up more gold per slave.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's finish. We got a bunch of novels coming in from these players, but we cannot allow this war to proceed, so we've ended our nap with Pangea just a couple turns after signing it, and Gath ended their nap with us in response. But Agartha apparently has been told he can stay at peace with us, and Zabalba is going to be very busy with the Erethian invasion. We're taking 3 provinces from Vaettiheim this turn that he offered us as part of the deal. Those earth gems are important to us. Vaettiheim is led by an extremely strong player, and I'm well aware of how powerful Farcaster can be late game. So there's an argument that letting him die would be good for our chances of victory. But he's small enough that I think he doesn't need to die in order for us to win, whereas the throne geography is such that Agartha and Pan kind of do. Or at least we would need to take 3 layers of forts into their territory in multiple directions. So he's looking at he's not looking at conquering Erythia, which is interesting, because that's what you and I have been thinking about for a long time.
Yeah, because to me, that's the one that you need to kill in order to actually win.
Yeah. I think the best play for us might be to do nothing for 2 to 3 turns while Vaettiheim takes and inflicts losses, then try to enter the war a bit after that. But Vaettiheim really wanted us to join now, and I think Latch is right that joining as soon as we are able is worth it to help solidify a long-term alliance. We don't have a throne rush path to victory, so we need someone other than us to help kill the giant blood economies. A war entirely inside Vaettiheim's territory won't do much to check Gath's scaling. Well, the die is cast on the decision. Hopefully nobody is salty enough to nap break against us. We have 6 forts under construction, completing over the next 3 turns, motivated in a large part by not wanting to deal with more idle drops. In other scaling news, the TNG efforts to break into blood continue. We summon our first Vampire Lord next turn. With the half-dozen empowered Zot mages, we have blood hunting. We've been able to get we should be able to get a new one every 3 turns or so. Still slow, but if the game runs late enough, we'll be able to tap into that form of economy too.
And given how long they'd had the Zots, I'm actually surprised that it took this long.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and empowering Zots is not actually much less efficient than vampires for blood hunting. Like if you're gonna have your vampire lords blood hunting, Zots are kind of a bargain. Actually, I think they're actually probably more efficient than vampire lords.
Yeah, they also just already had them for a while.
Right.
So like I would have expected them to have had a decent income by this point.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think the reason they haven't broken into vampires sooner is that, just the research. They've been trying to get up to demonic cleansing. I think the thing I'm surprised by is the half dozen empowered Zots, which, it's only 6, right? That seems a little low. But
yeah, maybe he's had other priorities.
Yeah. Also, Aretha said they aren't wish farming yet, which is a bit surprising if true. I don't think that's true. Oh, and we have a nap.
No, Aretha told us that they were wish farming.
Okay. Oh, and we have a nap 3 with Aretha. Their attack last turn was a mistake, as Agartha repeatedly defending provinces they agreed to cede over the last few turns. So
yeah, I don't think there's any reasonable claim to keeping Agartha alive at this point. I think it's just silly.
Yeah. So the strange thing, I gotta be careful going to the map or we might spoil battles. So they've reached out to Aretha and said, hey, what about that attack? And they're like, oh, it was a mistake. Then we have a nap. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Pangea. Hey guys, long time no message. I blame the European summer vacations. Not so quick strategic summary. Our goal the last 10 turns was to slow down the game leaders with shifting coalitions, diversify our alliances, and set up for the late game. We share globals with Gath, Aretha, and Vaettiheim. There's also a sickle death farm with Gath, redacted by Warp PC. We have 6 vampires and some other blood mages, Gautier and Blood One Pans. A quite small, but bound to grow, as we use our 100% of our blood slaves towards more vampires. Research is basically done, only Blood 9 and Construction 9 left. So the late age Pangean war engine is almost at full power, and will start to use and lose a lot more Centaur sages. As for the Diplo, pardon my French, but it's a clusterfuck, and I'm happy to not be involved. Sorry, Warp PC. Coalition against TNG was successful in slowing him, but we failed to take the throne we wanted, and as time passed, it was more and more obvious that Vaettiheim and Aretha were happy to not really fight and let Zabalba and us take the losses. I mean, look, it looks like you were pretty clear to to let Zabalba take the losses. He committed pretty
sparingly, yeah.
Pretty sparingly. As change was in order, a change was in order, but it needed several turns of ruthless negotiations with Demosthenes. Peace was made in a new coalition against the goblins, and their pesky global was set up. All good until this turn when we received news that TNG is canceling his nap with us. Not sure how it will unfold, but we're not afraid of fighting both wars at the same time. So, yeah.
If anything, though, the fact that they're not afraid of fighting both wars at the same time tells me that maybe they're not making that big of a commitment this time either.
Yeah. I mean, against Vaettiheim?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still going to be like Pan, Gath, Zabalba versus, and Aretha. Because Aretha said they're going to go on TNG. So it's 4 players against 2. Vaettiheim and TNG. So...
Yeah. Although in this case, it's not even that the 2 are allied. They just happen to be fighting the same people.
Well, I mean, TNG's thinking of it in terms of an alliance, right? Like they're thinking of it they would ideally choose to go into the war later after Vaettiheim is, taken a bit more of the load on their shoulders. But they're like, Vaettiheim wants us to do it. Let's go into the war now and actually try to solidify an alliance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can tell that that's their intention. It's just that they didn't pick Vaettiheim as an ally so much as they're fighting the same folks.
Yeah. I think they need to pick somebody as an ally. They can't, you can't be, so there's this pretty clear Pan-Gath thing going on. And, Pan was mentioning that they're sharing globals also with Aretha. Was there somebody else? Oh, Vaettiheim too, which is strange. But so, you can argue there's a Pan-Aretha alliance as well. But you can't, when players start doing this, you have to kind of sense it and form your own little counter alliance, I think. It's really risky not to.
Sense.
So,
Yeah, just that he's kind of running into a situation where Pangea can kind of get folks on his side, and you need to be able to do the same. So
Right.
I actually do agree.
Yeah. The problem is, it's just like he needs to kind of recruit more players. There's no more players left to recruit, like Agartha. I don't know. He needs to win over Arithia, I think. Like Arithia, the people that are like Arithia, okay, maybe they make some gains against TNG. They really need to they're going to have to fight Zabalba and Pan at some point. So Arithia long term can't really be in the Pan Zabalba alliance or Pan Zabalba Gath alliance. They really are more naturally suited to like a TNG Axis.
Yeah, we'll have to see what they actually pick, but I actually agree that it really is a kind of a misplacement that you have this big gem nation working with the blood, basically.
Yeah.
Blood sacred folks.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the late game when the globals go up, like Nexus and Astral Corruption, that also is going to be a pretty big divide between the blood and the gem nations. Okay, from Gath. Another Diplo change this turn. It turns out that TNG canceled Nap with Pan after having said many times how he's worried about the scaling powers. So I canceled the Nap with TNG as well, since that part of our agreement... Well, this is interesting. I wonder what would have happened if TNG went after Gath. They have a kind of very small border. Maybe it'd be too awkward to expand.
That's what I was thinking, actually. It's just that the border situation kind of makes that unviable.
Yeah. So I canceled that with TNG since that was part of our agreement with Pan and Zabalba. We'll be mostly in artillery mode. With us being the two largest nations, we still have almost no border. But artillery mode is what I can do well at this point. So I can support both Pan and Agartha. Oh, and Agartha. So Agartha is joining against TNG too.
I don't think Agartha was ever not joining against TNG.
Oh, okay. Yeah, his tactical delays in evacuating provinces.
Yeah, and he was just kind of stuck there, right? Like, if he gives up his territory, he's completely out. Not that he's like in,
right,
as it is, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. He does probably need to fight TNG. Arithia also said he'll fight TNG, but with Arithia, you never know. His commitments have been quite indecisive so far. Not blaming him at all. He just clearly has his own plan and goals, and he's never broken his word yet. As for the Vaettiheim War, the plan is mostly doomstacking with smaller commitments all around. Nothing too fancy, except that I deliberately scripted a few questionable things in my doomstack, which Vaettiheim might see and want to capitalize on, and not show some cool stuff at all. Right, so he's trying to keep some cards up his sleeve, tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah, it's always a little scary when you do those mind games, though, especially right at the start of war, just because you don't know where another player is going to defend.
Right, especially against a stealthy nation like Vaettiheim. So
that would be my concern, actually. It's just that you're doing your clever, hiding your best tricks, and then your army walks into something that you just weren't prepared for because you didn't expect, like, you expected them to wait to scout your army before fighting. And Vaettiheim actually ran into exactly that issue themselves, right, in their war against Pangea way back when.
Yeah. Okay, this is because I don't expect the big fight to happen this turn, even in number 3, or Province 3, even though it's a super telegraphed move, because I assume Vaettiheim will first want to know what I have to offer. It's risky, but probably not a huge one, or not a huge risk. Of course, if he has a large stealthed army of Rimvetti and mages around, it may turn out to be quite painful, ...
Yeah, that's my worry there.
Yeah. Overall, I think the main victory condition versus Vaettiheim and the world of rigor mortis, demonic cleansing is Wailing Winds and Blood Rain, even though we only have a single Wailing Winds caster. We can reach higher morale values on both troops and mages, so Wailing Winds should affect us less than him. There's an important caveat to this, which is Vaettiheim can do mass berserkers, and they're one of the best units in the game, so...
Yeah, and those guys they also can do Growing Fury.
Right.
And in fact, with their point buffing scripts, they're probably doing cast versions of Berserk anyways.
Right.
And like one of the things with Wailing Wind when you're using these Berserkers is basically just thicken route before they take damage. But if you're using that as part of your buff script already, then you're not going to be running into that issue at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I've bought a game into Hezekiah, which I don't think he was in the finals this year, but yeah, I was fighting into Dark Skies, and so I was fighting with like a starting -9 morale, and then he would do Blood Rain and Wailing Wind, so I was at 0 morale the first 1.5 turn of combat, and all my stuff instantly runs, and I was still winning fights against him because Vetti's one of the nations that can do that using Growing Fury and stuff. Okay.
Yeah, you just need to get it cast quickly enough.
Yeah. I was basically doing like a bunch of turn 1 buffs, and then trigger, setting off, and like Will of Fates, Mass Protection, or Army of Gold, or whatever, maybe Mass Flight, and just setting off Growing Fury and being like, all right, good luck, guys. All right. Later, we aim to add Whites and other undead to the Doomstack roster to make Rigor less painful, but Conjuration 9 is not online yet. I'm also trying to stop his Fiend summoning in 33 by doing Infernal Disease into Horror Attack. Me and Pan have scryed most of Eddie's lands and have not seen many water, almost no fire gems. So presumably his water income is not really huge and doesn't allow him to Murdering Winter every turn. Maelstrom shared between Vaettiheim, TNG, and Pan. But even when he does Murdering Winter, I have some funny answers for that. If we succeed in the war and everything somehow goes planned, which, let's be honest, it won't, we'll split Vaettiheim's lands up with me getting less, but claiming the Utgard cap and Silver Throne. P.S. Malika have a reasonably high chance to die, but he shouldn't trigger gem use until turn 8. If he survive, wait.
He's talking about the messenger angels,
right?
The little stealthy guys,
right? How do you not trigger gem use until turn 8?
Oh, that's when the gem trigger thing is done automatically.
Oh, wait, I don't know about that rule.
Oh yeah, if at turn 8, if you haven't triggered gem spending, it automatically goes on.
Oh, okay. So the scripts will not use it, but if they're off, like if they're on advance and cast with no conservative gem use, they'll use it, or something like that.
So conservative gem use doesn't stop you from using gems. It basically just means that the way that the math that Logsby showed worked was that basically conservative gem casting increases the amount that the caster cares about fatigue, because fatigue cost is gem cost. So it basically makes those spells lower value because the caster perceives, oh, the spell is too expensive.
Oh, huh, interesting.
For the value that we're getting from it. So it never actually stops you from spending gems.
Okay, I mean, I think it kind of does in practice. Like, they never summon fire elementals if you have them on conservative gem use that I've seen. But
sort of. It depends on what else they can do, right? Because they're like, oh, well, I can do this Pillar of Fire, which is only 20 fatigue and has, XY value, or I can summon an elemental, which has Z value.
Okay.
So they will still do it, actually, sometimes, even with conservative gem spending, especially if they're worried about friendly fire.
Yeah. Okay. So he says, if he succeeds, though, I plan to defend that province because it's 2 air gems. Yay. It's a third of my income. And because he likely won't expect me to defend it due to frozen mountain range. Also, want to say another thank you to my teammates. They're great. Cool.
That's nice.
Vaettiheim here. So this is going to be turn 1 of a 3v1 coalition against us. I don't know what we did exactly to merit it. I guess considering to attack Zabalba convinced Pangea and Gath has wanted to kill us for a while due to Illwinter, but also because it's honestly probably his best route to expand and gain access to thrones he would need to win. This war is really going to end up favoring Gath, I suspect, since it's hardest to defend versus him, while the other 2 nations are threatening my core territory. Because, right, Vaettiheim's only a 2-cap nation. There's basically the Vaettiheim Theater in the north and the Utgard region in the south, and then like a little bit of land he vultured but is now giving back to TNG, and that's it, So
yeah,
it's looking like he's going to strategically mostly give away Utgard and try to defend his core lands. So
that also makes sense from a diplomatic perspective, just in that the person to whom you can deflect the coalition would be Gath. They're the big scary person that you can point to until Pangea has a global up or something.
Right. That's a great point. TNG isn't terribly happy over the outcome, I don't believe, though he is probably happy to not be the recipient of the coalition himself. Well, not really. I mean, he's jumping into the getting coalition bus.
Yeah, he volunteered into rejoining his war against the coalition.
Yeah. I decided pretty quickly into that war that it wasn't something I wanted to really support. So I generally aim towards favorable relations with him, even throughout that. I don't believe letting multiple blood powers with super sacreds alongside a wish scaling nation to roam free is the best plan, and killing off Tianqi did nothing to help with that. That being said, his peace just meant a switch of everyone else into attacking me. And I'd really like to see an end of the coalition targeting. I was actually looking forward to a 1v1 with Gath possibly opening up, but I'm not looking forward to fighting on all sides in a 3v1. Tianqi is supposed to be fighting Pan shortly and has ended his non-aggression pact, so that should help reduce the issue. Arethia mentioned interest in fighting Zabalba, but he has a NAP 5, not really communicating much with us or Tianqi for that matter. If he gets involved, it should result in a world that's mostly 1v1s. But we know that's not happening because we know Arethia is going on Tianqi.
Yeah. Or rather that Tianqi and Arethia are fighting.
Right.
Who's going on who is a matter of opinion.
Right. But also a kind of 3v3. If he doesn't get involved, there's a good chance we'll die slowly, but hopefully painfully for them. Since I don't think we can sustain the gym expense to actually push two sides and eliminate or reduce one player, likely Zabalba, to a point where we could turn things around. Not with the blood summons they have access. Not with the blood summon access they have. One of them, sure, but both, nah. Overall, I don't really love the situation, particularly the whole Diplo of the game. There's some elements of real life. It's super crazy summer, and I've never really felt like I have the time to invest in the game, which impacted my war timings. Despite that, we're in a fairly strong position mechanically, but the diplomacy has just been heavily skewed towards Gath and Pan, sustaining an alliance through the entirety of the game. We're making an effort to wipe an incoming Zabalba force this turn, which we'll see if it works. There's a lot of failure points. We don't know how much remote firepower is going to come, and we don't know if he'll try big magic phase illusionists. We don't know if they'll be hitting us, if they'll be hitting just absolutely everything with raids or playing it slow. We've got some stuff coming out, and of course, Ilwinter's always fun. We've got a giant stockpile of Rimvetti and Nifl Jarls added to it now. Long message since it's been a bit, and I was overdue. Okay.
Yeah, nice to see the analysis. And I actually think it makes total sense that out of the people that you can intercept, like we kind of mentioned last turn, Jabalba's the one that's going to have the most telegraph attack. Ironically, given that they're the super mobile stealth nation, just because of the technology that they're using just these big stacks of sacreds.
And we kind of have an idea what they're going to be going for. Like there's some infrastructure. I believe the throne right near them, is pretty logical target. And we also know like just how we played in the war with Tianqi. I mean, I don't know if Vaettiheim knows this, but his MO is kind of just dropping huge sacred stacks on forts and being like, okay, are we going to stay or are we going to go? And the way you defend against that is you're like, okay, here's 4 forts that I put booby traps in. Come and get them. So...
Yeah, as long as you can kill those armies reliably, then you don't need to be too scared.
Right.
It's just, that's not a mean feat by any means.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a horror attack on top of Vaettiheim's Utgard. We've got a horror attack here. So this was interesting. So there's a scout here that was triggered to attack.
Yeah, you want to move them in from an adjacent province, not attack from within that province.
Right, and this is now a Vaettiheim horror casting, and he did this wrong. Yeah. And then we've got another horror attack on Vaettiheim. We've got this kind of interesting. So this is a magic phase attack by some adepts of the Silver Order, and they're moving in against Zabalba. And it's basically a bunch of like body ethereal wooden warrior raiders supported by an air elemental. So kind of cool little budget script.
Yeah, interesting little move. As you said, budget. It's interesting how much commitment I would say that is, just based on it taking a Silver Order and using magic phase in order to do that. So I would guess, I don't actually remember which province that was, but I'm guessing that it's something to do with cutting retreats. That he basically put much more of a commitment into that province.
Yeah, and I think there's only one really big battle this turn because I've kind of peeked at this turn ahead of time. I don't know if it's here. We'll watch the Zabalba Vaettiheim battles because we have a. Okay, this is it.
We were also told by Vaettiheim that this was going to be that he was only doing one big battle in defense.
Right. So we can watch this battle, which would be really cool, and then we'll go to the strategic map. But I didn't want to spoil this one by, looking at the map. So on Zabalba's side, we've got a pretty low amount of mages. We've got a golem to do anti-magic. We've got this guy presumably to do Wailing Winds. Maybe a Communion Slave. We've got this guy to maybe do relief. No, that's not enough for relief. This is mass protection.
Yeah, I was going to say either mass protection or I had been thinking Serpent's Blessing, but no, it can't be that either. It must be mass protection.
Right.
If he doesn't have big earth magic, so he can't do... Or sorry, if he doesn't have enough big earth mages, so he can't spread around Marble Warriors, mass protection is kind of your next best. Yeah, that guy doesn't have gems or the boosters that we'd seen before for the...
Yeah, I think this guy's doing just Divine Blessing.
Weapons of Sharpness.
Because if these guys are on attack turn 1, he's not going to have time to do anything else. This guy...
So Weapons of Sharpness is actually super important for Zabalba strategically, just because that's the one thing that he has that kind of stops his armies from being thugged.
Right. And he does have one caster here. I don't know if this is also... No, so he's got one caster. But if we look at just the total mage commitment from Zabalba, it's only like 7-8 mages. When you're in this range, you're actually pretty vulnerable to assassins and stuff because this guy could get assassinated and then your whole thing's kind of fucked. And this is one of the things Arco had looked at the turn and it had messaged me, the player. He was like, these Vaettiheim armies, he's being really budget in the mages, but he's making them super vulnerable to assassins. And Vaettiheim can do assassinations in like 6 different ways. They can roll blood 3s for their big Gaijas and do Infernal Disease. They can do Black Heart Assassins. They've got the Recruit of the Capital Assassins, where you just put a lifelong protection on them. Like, there's so many ways for Vaettiheim to do that, so...
Yeah, it is a very scary nation to attack into that way if you're not taking a lot of precautions in order to basically cover your butt.
Right. And this is not covering really anything. It's more like saying, I'm going to do the thing I do really well. Like it's not protected from like strategic nukes, like, this guy does have cold resistance at least. Yeah. So
like once your guys get sniped away, then you also just lose that huge pile of demons. Like I'd be very scared of running.
I mean, if this guy's leading the demons around, he could get killed by a lifelong protection assassin. Like that wouldn't be that strange.
It's not definitely not even a big ask of Vaettiheim in this stage of the game.
Yeah. So there's a lot of weak points in this. On Vaettiheim's side, we've got a few cubes. We have a fuck ton of Rim Petty. This doesn't look like a lot because they're all densely packed, but like 2 tiles is 12. So this is probably 140 Rim Petty. And Vaettiheim tends to not take... we'll have to look at the scales this one has, but like I know it's pretty common to only make like 6 or 7 Rim Petty a turn. So this is a tremendous investment from him.
Yeah, I think those both of the sacreds that he has at this point in the game.
This is wild. So he's got this looks like one of the leaders, and it's only got 40 leadership, but he's putting on morale items to deal with Wailing Winds. You would normally, I think, want to summon a sleeper or something. Right? This only has 40 leadership, so I'm not sure what the thought is there.
That is odd, actually. I think I would guess, looking at it, that's it must just be what he had in the neighborhood. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is summon like Bane Lords. They're really good for this job. So you can summon them, put them on. The only problem there is they can get kind of picked out with some anti-undead spells.
Yeah, if you're not running enough undead or skeleton spam on your side, Bane Lords can be really scary just because you can lose them to like maggots or a Ravenous Swarm.
Ravenous Swarm, yeah, that's the real one. The Ravenous Swarm's really good at picking off like the one undead guy in your army. And we have a Staff of Storms here. So this is one of the, you basically just like the anti...
One of the mandatory things to bring to fight against Zabalba.
Big nature mage, bunch of mages. In total, the mage support from Vaettiheim, it looks like about 30. So let's just watch it and enjoy. Storm goes up. We see anti-magic weapons. So basically all the Zabalba stuff getting cast. Coming over here, we see a bunch of turn 1 things. Warriors of Niflheim mass regen. Weapons of sharpness getting cast as well. That means these little monsters have weapons of sharpness on them. That's frightening. Mass protection going off. Frostfin. Frostfin's actually really important for Vaettiheim too, because they will very quickly freeze their own cold resistant 5 mage core and troops.
Yeah, because the strength of those auras. They just have so many.
Yeah, they'll freeze. You'll freeze your own troops like right here in 2 turns, which we can like. This guy's already. Wait, was it? Some of these guys don't have that much. 18. Yeah, this guy's already at 30 fatigue, right? He hasn't entered combat yet. So, anti-magic, bunch of things. Oh no, and this group's on hold and attack, and this group's on attack. So
that's also something that he had been doing before, remember? Because that was how he was splitting up his weapons of sharpness casting.
That's exactly right. He was able to get more bang for his buck out of his weapons of sharpness. Now, did he at least get that? Because that was an expensive purchase. He did. So these Aussies, they're coming in late, but they do have the weapons of sharpness buff, which they wouldn't have had if he had them joining in at the same time.
Yeah, it's just a question of, as you pointed out, is that even worth it?
Look at this little green goblin army. Everyone has Moss Body.
Yeah. The loss of density though is very, very damaging.
To Zabalba?
Yeah, but he has his guys split up like that. So with Vaettiheim, but in part because of how they fit 6 guys in a square, the line of their front is not that broad. So like it's very easy to get all of the Rimvetti engaged in melee. Whereas with Zabalba, by coming in waves like this, he doesn't get the advantage of being able to surround and overwhelm them.
Yeah.
But he is going to be overwhelming these guys, given that they're buffed to the absolute gills, especially in comparison to the very minimal amount of buff that Zabalba has available on his side.
Right. I mean, Zabalba has the important buffs, right? Like they've got, Bloodlust up. These guys have a tremendous amount of strength. He's got weapons of sharpness on him. They've got the Bless. But I mean, the quantity, the volume of buffs on these guys is enormous. Like this guy's quickened. He's got sharpness. Look at the stat line. He's running 18-19. He's got wave warriors on him too. I think we missed that, but he's got fortitude. So
yeah, I mean that's the full Physmos suite.
Yeah, I mean this is like a thug. Good luck killing him. Vaettiheim has like 100 thugs running around right now. And sure, these Aussies are capable of killing thugs, but can they kill 120 thugs?
Yeah, it's a big ask.
Are these like great swords of sharpness thugs? Looks like 120 of them.
Yeah, I tend to associate that tactic with nations like Is. I mean, Vaettiheim is showing that they can do that just as well.
Yeah. So this was in Jaburnia. So Vaettiheim loses 1 adept of the Silver Order. He turns 1 thing into a priest, he gets 2 soulless. Basically, he loses 2 mages. They all get converted to soulless, most likely. And then he loses 18 troops. How many Rimvetti? 2.
Yeah, almost nothing, especially given the investment that Zabalba lost in that battle.
Right. And Zabalba lost important gear, right? Like, when we were seeing TNG fight, the way the TNG armies, like, his army wealth was largely his items, like the kits he had for his mages. He only had 1 storm staff, right? If he lost the army with the storm staff, and then he was going to be fucked. And Zabalba lost a lot of gear in this. I mean, he had not a lot, but, he lost the golem, who didn't have gear. But he lost this guy, who had...
Yeah, he lost a lot of gem investment. I guess another way of phrasing that is he lost a lot of what for him is limited resources,
right,
which is going to take him a while to replace, even if he can afford the gems themselves.
Yeah. So, and this is on the back of losing a pretty big stack to TNG. I mean, Zabalba, I think I'd said a couple episodes ago, there's never a better time to put Zabalba out of the game than right now. Well, now may be a slightly better opportunity.
Yeah. Now is the real best time to put them out.
Now is the real best time. So this is where the battle happened. So this wasn't actually the throne. This was a fort nearby that Vaettiheim correctly anticipated an attack. The throne itself got hit by a far smaller force, an archdevil, which again, Putting 3 mages, especially one that can't stealth, on top of a Vaettiheim throne,
Very dangerous.
you're asking for this guy to be assassinated. You're basically giving it to Vaettiheim for free. Just kill this guy, please. The way you do this, by the way, is Vaettiheim, just so the viewers know, is you make the little Vaettigaija, which are these little things, and you're just going to have them in all your forts like you normally do. And then you just stick on a black heart, and then you can either put a water bottle or a lifelong protection or like a lantern shield or some of the other good assassin items on them. And then you can put, like the water ones are actually probably the best for it, because you can put, or the water and nature ones are both good. Nature ones can do Creeping Doom. The water ones can do like big water elementals.
Or even Frozen Heart for many
Right.
units that you're assassinating.
And so they'll just blow, like that Archdevil would just get blown the fuck up. Like he would just get killed really easily. This is like the easiest thing for them to kill. I've killed like full kitted artifact-laden Tartarians with Vaettigaija with black hearts. So it's
And one of the scary things about that isn't just that they're good at it; it's how ubiquitous that is. That is literally any fort that Vaettiheim has.
right. Like it should be illegal to put like the stealthy mages is fine because you can stealth away, but you can't stealth Aussies. But this guy should be illegal unless he has a shade mail. And then they moved a big force here, but this is smaller than their other army. Is this enough to pop the fort? It might have been. Yeah, okay, so they popped this fort. This one's not popped. And then they've done some light raiding here. And then Vaettiheim pings this.
Yeah, so Xibalba did in fact do a fairly broad front, which is what Vaettiheim had been talking about.
Right.
But he did make enough of a commitment that the losses that he took in that army that Vaettiheim correctly was able to intercept are very significant.
Right. So this is interesting. So this is this province that we saw Vaettiheim magic phase raiders into. So we've got this same raider kit. Unfortunately, this guy doesn't have any air gyp, so he can't do, air elementals. And the other thing is, I don't know, because they're going to be buffed with the wooden warriors and stuff. Presumably, this guy's got to be able to bless the Aussies. So, okay. So they're not going to care about body ethereal. Oh, and the Aussies are going for the commanders. And highly likely these guys are just dead. Oh, but he got luck off.
One of the things that's very scary about fighting these flying nations in general is just that you don't get all of your buff script off every time. In this case, though, Vaettiheim got enough important stuff off quickly enough that he was able to actually take care of the Ozelotls themselves. The question is just, you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So this is why
I was gonna say
berserkers
the
are good
question is,
units.
can he kill the mage? But yeah,
Yeah,
the answer is yes, he can.
he can. So this is about a pretty equal trade. Maybe even a little favoring Zalba here, because this is all very replaceable stuff. Losing an adept to the Silver Order and 2 other mages kind of sucks, but at least Vaettiheim keeps the province.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you lose mages is not great, but I mean that I would call that a successful raid defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what I was saying is that one of the things that's very annoying about fighting these ubiquitous flying nations is you don't get everything off. So it can be hard to plan out your buff script just because you're not sure what all's actually going to be available in the combat.
Ooh, some leech casting from Vaettiheim. Kind of cool. So this is I love this. I love this raid from Vaettiheim. It's really cool. The one thing that I would be salty as hell is these cav. They're like, oh, skeletons. Nope. Get the mage. Like, oh man, I split them up on both sides just for this so it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, well, the mage is going to be the lowest protection target in the field. So yeah, it loves going for them.
Yeah, well, it also is going to set the target they're going for at the very beginning, right before there's skeletons on the field. It can be a nice thing about having a few sacrificial guys up here to kind of draw aggro. Or maybe like one behind, one in front, just like a single bat. If he's on attack rear. Oh, no, but it's PD. They don't get to target.
Yeah, you don't get to pick.
But yeah, successful.
Like we've seen, though, I would say that AI's like damage targeting very often actually kind of does what you want.
Yeah, I know some people have tested that since the videos have now been going up now, and they were saying that's not the case. So there's some controversy. I don't know what % sure you are. I don't know at all, but I know there was some controversy about whether that's actually true or not.
But whether it prioritizes max damage?
Yeah.
Are we talking about the archer targeting?
Yeah, I think
Or
so.
I mean, I guess it's targeting in general, but yeah, Fire None, in my experience, does tend to just, make a reasonable guesstimate about what it's going to do the most damage to.
Yeah.
At least that's my experience with it. Although I've also read, but haven't verified, that it tends to ignore PD as well, which is also interesting.
Yeah. I'm not sure what it does. Oh man. These Aussies. Oh, it looks like they did it. Did he lose many? He lost 4. There's a pretty big PD dump.
He did
though.
beat a PD dump. Yeah, for only 11 Aussies. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And just the momentum shift here. I mean, Zabalba's just... So they've lost a ton here, right? But while they paid for this loss, out the nose... Oh, is this a... I wonder if this was a gym mule. It was. Did he script it to retreat?
That's
nope.
Annoying.
Oh, he could have retreated too. That feels bad.
Yeah, it's always risky to send those guys in, but I mean, Zabalba at least does have easy access to stealthy guys. But yeah, in situations like this, it's very damaging if you ever forget to set that retreat order. Just because those guys are they're functionally very expensive, just in terms of like the gems that they're carrying.
So I think the situation, we'll look at the Pangean front in a second. I think the situation with Zabalba is they've taken a ton of land, which is great for like seizing the initiative, but they've lost this huge stack. If somehow Vaettiheim can kill this stack, then there's only going to be 1 stack left for Zabalba, which is here. And after that is really just scraping the bottom of the can to see if there's anything left. If they can kill this 1 more stack somehow, presumably it's going to be storming this fort, then I think that buys Zabalba out of the war. It opens Zabalba to just being conquered. Like, I'd be sending, like, you send this screenshot to Erythia, be like, hey, dude, I know you're thinking about going on, like, Zabalba. How about these apples?
Yeah. I mean, I at that point, Zabalba just wouldn't have enough stuff left at home in order to even defend themselves.
Yeah. Okay, let's shift to the... do you have some thoughts on maybe the Zabalba conflict here? How do you rate all this?
Honestly, okay, so first of all, I want to say that I hold Zabalba's player to a very high standard, so any like criticism that I'm levying is meant to be in the sense of these guys are really, really good, and what Zabalba has been doing this game seems to have been basically, here is my big stack of Ocelotls. Can you handle this? And a lot of people here can. So he's basically been taking this strategy of, you put together the Ocelotl hammer, and then you just send it at someone and play aggressively enough that you just overwhelm them because they can't deal with your big horde of fully magic weapons, most resists, hard-hitting sacred units. But everyone that has made it to this stage in the game absolutely can handle that. And that's kind of what we're seeing, is that he's not using the tricks which Zabalba can pull out, which we've kind of talked about off and on throughout the series. He's just using the Ocelotls as though he's playing like a Hellblessed Mictlan, but he doesn't have the Hellblessed that supports it. Like, he should have more than just this hammer. And by just using the Ocelotls, he's kind of setting himself up to fail, just in the sense of like, everyone kind of knows what he's doing. Like, yeah, we've all seen this, and everyone knows how to answer it. So, yeah, I don't think that his play recently, both here and in his war against TNG, was very inspired, for lack of a better way of putting it, just because he's been using the same thing over and over again. And these players are going to punish that. Like, you need to actually start using your tricks.
Yeah. In fact, like, the successful part of this turn was not doom stacking, right? The successful part was not doing that. And that part
was the raiding.
He did a lot of pretty nice finesse raiding, different. It wasn't the same thing. Sometimes it's Skelly spam, sometimes it's Leech, sometimes it's small squads of Aussies. So,
yeah, that part went well.
Yeah. Managers.
But like, you can't conquer someone without ever winning a battle.
Right.
And Zabalba has been bringing the exact same tactic to every battle, and people know how to beat it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's shift over here to see what's happening in Panland. 9 hags. What did the 9 hags do? This could just be a forest where he has them set to retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, this looks like some kind of budget. Yeah. Oh, that.
Oh, the retreat routes are
That might have
cut.
been last-minute blood hunting. Last-minute blood hunting.
This?
Excuse me.
Oh. I think this is just a forest lap. The problem is you got all those retreat routes cut.
Oh, yeah.
These are all dead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. It is last-minute something, but it's last-minute researching instead.
Yeah, these guys
I haven't seen
actually
which province.
could have defended this province, strangely enough. Because if they all spent their buffs buffing up the PD here, they would have won.
I don't know, 10 sages and 43 crossbows.
Oh, it's 10 sages. Okay, maybe not. For some reason, I thought it was
Yeah,
one
it's
sage.
at the very least a very big ask.
Yes, with gems, maybe. If he had quickness and imps, three astral mages, I think he can do it. Maybe.
Yeah, but astral mages are rare and expensive for Vaettiheim.
Yeah, I think he just stealthed these guys out. This is like trying to be greedy. It's like, oh, I can get one more turn of research, you know?
But you can't.
You can't. So, yeah, minus 10 mages. That's definitely going to be felt.
Yeah, especially the astral guys. Like, those guys are just so valuable to
Yeah.
have in your armies.
They are so valuable. This looks like an interesting little squad. Strength of Gaia. Bunch of body ethereal and luck spam happening. These guys may be on guard commander. Creeping Doom.
Yeah, I don't think that those guys are that great. We kind of talked about this before, that like the advantage of using the Grove Guard is basically just for them being berserkers. So if you're fighting into Wailing Winds, you can put that up. But I just don't think that like if you're doing like a big buff squad like this, that they're going to be more effective than just your cataphracts.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, I suppose the trample is better against goblins than it is, against other things. But yeah, no, I feel you there.
They'll just get fatigued out so quickly.
Yeah. And, if they have ethereal on them, the goblins are way better. But probably against unethereal goblins, it's pretty good. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see what he's going to be switching up with that, because presumably like that's not his army, right? That's just taking a province, and he can recombine them later. So we'll see how he actually is using those troops, and if, as you had suggested, it's really just to get berserk on those guys.
So this is kind of interesting. Gath did horror rating here, but these provinces were given to TNG. So TNG ends up bumping both the scouts here.
Huh.
I'm taking these. So
Yeah, I guess that's just communication issues, but you don't tend to see that too much in Discord games.
Well, no, these guys aren't allies, right? So Gath was taking it, and Gath ended his nap with TNG.
Right, but I mean, they're allies against Vaettiheim at least, right?
No. TNG got given these by Vaettiheim.
Oh, I thought that TNG had like nominally been part of the anti-Veti coalition. But you're right, actually. No, I had actually forgotten about that he hadn't actually been invited.
Well, he probably been, yeah. I mean, he didn't want to participate, right? So he's trying to form
he was invited at all.
Yeah, probably not. He's trying to form an alliance with Vaettiheim. So these were given as part of it, which were probably originally were given as part of the alliance. Who's this? Oh, taking this stuff back from Agartha. I guess this was pre-war borders now.
He finally got it back. After many moons.
Then Agartha taking this from Pan. That's interesting. Okay, now let's go to the main part of the show, which is the Gathian invasion of Utgard, now controlled by Vaettiheim. So
Yeah,
here
so this
he
is where
patrols
we're gonna
scouts
see-
out. This army didn't move.
And that army is very importantly on a lab. So presumably he's waiting there because he can refill on gems or possibly even adjust his script based on what he sees before moving forward.
Right. And this army looks, pretty vulnerable, right? Like it's got, some Sheds, some Shadim, some Shadim and some Seir, and just one, 2 mages here. So it's going to be resistant to like thug squads and things like that, but pretty vulnerable.
Yeah. Vulnerable in general.
So interestingly, so Gath had these wolves coming in to clear out this province after the horrors hit it. Vaettiheim strangely has a Nifljarl he sends back, and then has these leech casters up front guarded by eagles.
I'm surprised that the Nifljarl retreated, but I mean, I guess it worked. But that's a very expensive budget defense.
Ooh. Yeah.
Was he just there because they were summoning?
I think he was trying to get him into Vaettiheim. I mean, into Utgard. I think he was a long-range move, and well, he could have just moved. No, because the province wasn't owned by him. But was it? I don't know if a horror attack, if you just move into the province, will it trigger a battle? Because I know if you were to, if Gath were to magic phase like a Gadol on here, and a Nifljarl was moving from here to here, that would, even if the Nifljarl wasn't on move and patrol, that would trigger a battle on this fort. I'm not sure if that works with horrors that disappear.
No, it does. Okay, yeah. So the way that it works is that if you lose your province in the magic phase to the horrors, then yes, you don't make a friendly move inside of the fort, even if there's nothing remaining there, because the outside of the fort is not considered your territory until the end of the turn resolution. Okay. So you do fight outside the walls.
So that was probably him just wanting to make sure that Nifljarl gets inside the walls to the main portion of the army.
It is cool then that he actually anticipated the horror attack.
Yeah.
Although I suppose at this point it's something that you can reliably expect from Gath.
Yes. And then he pings this and scouts this. He's got, let's look at the kit on this Malakath. Is that how you say it? Oh, no.
Malak?
Malak. Okay.
Yeah, the plural is Malak.
Oh, I was looking at the name, I think. Manacle. Okay. The Malak.
Manacle, the Malak.
Yeah. So it's got a lifelong protection, amulet anti-magic, and a black tower shield. This is a pretty classic and great script. I mean, a kit for these guys. It's a pretty efficient raider. They're not going to die to arrows. They're not going to die to mind hunts. And yeah, they're pretty tough. They also benefit. They have all.
Yeah, they also have just incredibly high map moves. This is kind of like the coolest thing that you have with these guys. I have occasionally, I should say, run into, when you're using these lifelong protection Malakim, that they will just, like, that the imps won't kill everything in 5 rounds, and then it runs in and dies in melee. But most, like, sane PD values like this, then the LLP works just fine.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to go crazy making a ton of these, because, they're not very hard to counter. But it's one of the things, it's a pretty budget way to take, at great distance, medium amounts of PD. So
the other thing,
and these are really cheap summons, so you kind of don't want to put much on them in terms of gear. I mean, you could.
That's actually what I was going to say, is that the other thing that they do is they just work as being the things that carry around your lifelong protections, because they're stealthy, they're high map moves, so they can bring the LLP to where it's needed. And if you want an assassin, you can just slap a Blackheart on them.
Right. So, and then we've got, interesting, this worked here. So we've got Gath Force that had snuck in doing some wolves. Some wolves here had failed. So Gath mostly poking and prodding for most of these places, except, this actually is interesting too, because this was a successful horror attack, and then Vaettiheim sent the scout in, but Gath sent two.
Yeah, if you know that you're being hit by horror marks, it definitely makes sense to just regular phase scouts just like around, and then you'll just incidentally catch a bunch of these horror raids and be able to retake the province that way.
Now, this is Gath's main thrust so far, and this is a wildly scary army. And there's nothing here on Vaettiheim's side.
But this does at least give Vaettiheim the chance to see the weight of the rhino charging at him, so to speak.
Yeah, there are economical ways to kill this. This almost certainly is going to be turn 1 mass flight. This is going to be Army of Gold. Probably Firestorm, I'm guessing. I think you can cast that with a Fire 5. 3 gems.
But you typically bring more gems than that.
Yeah.
Just because Firestorm is such a high fatigue spell, you can actually give yourself afflictions using it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Strangely doing hold and cast. My bet is that for a real battle, he's going to switch up hold and attack and do attack and then do turn 1 storm. I just kind of have that feeling. Because the main way to counter this is doing a fatigue play, like especially rigor, and then having like a bug swarm screen, which won't do great against cubes, but...
Yeah, but the other thing is that that's, as you pointed out, that's something that Vaettiheim can kind of just do. Like, very casually, they can just put one wherever it's needed, to the point that if you're attacking into Vaettiheim, you should kind of expect rigor plays in any given province.
Yeah. The exception is that, so demonic cleansing is going to make these guys get fatigued out really fast. But these, the Gibberim, as you would say...
I just like using whatever the native plurals are.
Right.
I know in English you can always just put an S on it. Kind of like how octopuses is totally okay to say, even if people get like really nerdy about wanting to say octopodes or whatever.
It's not octopi? Is that not the right thing?
There's a, well, yeah,
Okay.
it's a Greek word, so you should use the Greek pluralization. But in practice, in English, you can pretty much always just use a default plural and have it be like considered correct. So it's totally fine to say givers. I just like using the whatever the native plural of stuff is, especially for stuff that's like kind of more esoteric languages like the Amerindian nations, like for Shababa, saying like Bakabab or whatever, just because it's kind of cool and different.
Yeah. So I think the challenge for Vaettiheim, I think there's a few challenges. One is demonic cleansing is going to help these guys fatigue out more quickly with rigor. The Gibberim and the Zealots are not going to fatigue out quite as quickly, so you'll probably have to fight them longer. The other thing is there's a lot of Shadim, and these guys are going to, because these guys will go berserk too, and once they go berserk, they're going to even take more fatigue. These guys don't take no fatigue from shooting their lightning bolt. So, you know, I don't know how long it will take with rigor and demonic cleansing up for them to fatigue out. My guess is 7 or 8 turns.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be quick.
So that's a lot of lightning bolts to get thrown. So you need to be resistant to, how many is this? 36 lightning bolts a turn for 8 turns. That's a lot.
All order, yeah.
And then you need to have a fatigue play and then a screen and then probably Skelly spam and probably relief up on your side. And yeah, I mean, it's tricky. I think you could fight this, but
you have to prepare very specifically to fight it. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And we know there's some stuff down here. I don't know how many of the Rim Veti are down here, right? I don't know if this is mostly just the Veti Berserkers. The Veti Berserkers might be able to do it, but the Rim Veti have the advantage, at least, if I believe their bless is like shock 15, right?
Yes, he took 15 shock resistance, and they don't have native vulnerability the way that the Jotuns do.
So, you know, he's actually, I think he's pretty well set up. I mean, you know, that takes care of the lightning bolt issues. I think if he has enough of the Rim Veti, he can actually maybe even stomp this army, I want to say. But
I think that it is going to come down to what spells are available on both sides.
Yeah.
Especially given that Gath is sieging a fort. We don't know what the assassination situation is going to look like on the inside.
Right. And the other thing we should just mention is that if you encounter a stack like this in a normal game and you are not a super duper high skilled player, this is like an ending of the world stack. Like, this is a death sentence for most nations. You know, like,
oh yeah, I mean, you see like a pile of elemental royalty and a huge amount of demons. Like, you really have to know what you're doing in order to fight something like this.
Yeah. And this is way scarier than the Zabalba stacks so far, I would say, just from the mage support and the research. So
exactly, yeah, that's what I was going to say, is like this one has real mages behind it, and these are very resilient mages too. Like, these are not chumps.
Right.
This is like elemental royalty as your like primary casters.
And there's enough volume of mages with like the cheap shitty mages like Yodonis, you know, no offense to Yodonis, but, and then some like crystal sorceresses, some Abbas, that it gives enough bulk to the general commander core that you're not really sweating too many bullets about assassins.
Yeah, and even if stuff does get like assassinated, that you have a reasonable chance of being able to just pile a bunch of scouts on here too. We don't see that, but typically if you're doing that as like using scouts as your assassination answer, you sneak them with the army until the siege takes place, and then you decloak them as part of your sieging force.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, coming up with, like, you don't know, if you had a really high tier assassin that you're like, okay, we're going to be able to kill an Archdevil or a Queen of the Storms, you don't know what you're rolling. Are you rolling the Queen of the Sea? Are you rolling the Queen of the Storms? Are you rolling one of these Gadol thugs? And that makes it really hard to come up with like an expensive assassin that could kill one of these things. So
Yeah, I mean, Moonblades kind of work against most of the stuff there, but the amount of resistances that you need to stack in order to fight, air, water, or fire, or earth is
Right.
almost unmanageable.
Yeah. So this is the big play. I don't know if anything's inside of it. And Vaettiheim losing this is going to be kind of a big deal. This is a super nice site. It's basically like a global going down, them giving this up. It's better than a capital in ways. It's a 2, 6, 7, a 7-gem site.
Yeah, the Labyrinth is like basically a capital by itself, just because you get so few gems from your cap in LA.
Right. So I think the short summary is Vaettiheim's shown they're capable of winning these major army fights. They've shown they can do some counter raiding.
But they've also said that they were going to be punting the Utgard side. So even if they theoretically could kill that enormous gas stack, they might just not.
Yeah, that's another possibility. So like they were sneaking stuff in. Like they're clearly planning on giving Gath the fight for Utgard. But they could also just announce to everybody, I'm giving Gath my stuff in Utgard for free. Congratulations for empowering them. Zabalba and Pan, fuck you. I'm going to fight you to the death or something. But even, or like until you turn on Gath. And they'll be like, okay. Because I don't think, especially part of that agreement was actually buying Utgard off. Like, how about I just give you the Utgard, buying Gath off. If I just give you all the Utgard land, like a tremendous amount of stuff, including mini forts, can we just like coexist and I'll fight these guys? Because Utgard probably doesn't want to get stack wiped either.
The problem though is that as Gath, you're in like this big alliance situation thingy. So that's going to be affecting his decision to stay in the war. Kind of like how Vaettiheim would like not cancel their NAP with TNG just to basically like be a good ally. I think that's going to be even more true given the strength of the alliance between Gath and Pan.
Yeah, that's probably true. So it might be that Gath wouldn't take that deal to like, hey, I'll get this land for free, but then we kind of come to terms. Because if he did do that, and he could also just give it to him for free. Utgard doesn't get to, Gath doesn't really get a say in whether Vaettiheim is forced to defend. But
that's true, yeah.
But
you can't make someone fight.
Right.
You can only kill them.
But then it's like if Gath is going to push past the Utgard region, like, oh, don't worry, guys, I'll come help. I'm coming to help. And he's like pushing all the way in here into like the core of Vaettiheim region. It's like,
yeah, then he's just starting to get stuff.
Okay, you're getting a little big there, buddy. So, yeah, you can just give this land to Utgard, keep your Mage Corps alive. Why do I keep saying Utgard? Give this land to Gath, keep your Mage Corps alive, and then point the big finger at him and say, okay, you guys have made me make a monster. Let me know when you're ready to take care of it, and I'll go try to take my stuff back.
Yeah, it always feels bad to make those sorts of sacrifices, though. I actually have a hard time doing that. I just don't like giving up stuff like that. Even if you can theoretically get it back later, just because you're reliant on the diplomacy at that point. And I'm always very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I think the thing is it's better, I think, to do that than it is to, if that's going to be the outcome anyway.
Yeah, true. If you're guaranteed to lose the fight, then sure, I think that makes sense. I would try to do almost everything first before making those kinds of sacrifices, because you can hit a point where you give up just too much stuff and you really just can't come back from it anymore.
Yeah, especially with the kind of rating pressure that's put on Vaettiheim right now, like he's not going to be recruiting anything, that's for sure. But if he gives up the Utgard land, he might not be able to afford upkeep on his troops, and he might start having berserkers and stuff leave him. So
yeah, and at that point, you're kind of in a death spiral,
right?
So I would be very reticent to make that sort of play,
right?
Even if it's theoretically doable.
So you kind of have to, figure out where you take fights and where you don't, but probably better to do that than getting bled out. So I think it just, it depends. We'll have to see what Vaettiheim can do. But right now they've just lost. Look at this score graph here.
Yeah, that is so much. That's literally half their land, actually.
Yeah.
They've lost literally half of their entire empire in one turn.
Yeah, they went from position 4 to like death's bed.
But like, it's not just position 4. It's that all of the nations in the entire game have been neck and neck, right? Like
Right.
no one has been surging ahead. But on the other hand, TNG recovered from almost the exact same province loss. Like if you compare those two, admittedly TNG did start with more, but if you like compare those two lines, I think TNG actually lost more in the first turns of the war than Vaettiheim did so far.
It's not even close. This is turn 1 of the war. This is turn 2. It took TNG 2 turns to lose this much stuff.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. He's lost. His slope is literally twice as fast as TNG's. Like this is nobody in the game so far has had a single worse like opening up your turn and looking to see how it went as Vaettiheim has.
That's true. On the other hand, he at least knew that this was coming.
Right.
But yeah, I actually hadn't realized that that was over the course of 2 turns.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did literally lose twice as much then.
Yeah. So, the Vaettiheim armies are all still alive though, and when you're in a coalition, you live or die by your armies. So,
right. And we've seen people push off these coalitions before, so I don't think that it's unthinkable that Vaettiheim wins some decisive engagements and starts pushing back, especially if he can actually kill one of those Gath armies, because he already did a ton of damage to Xibalba, like an actual like discouraging amount of damage.
Yeah. The one kind of complaint, critique, whatever I'll file against Vaettiheim right now is just that I think you have to do better counter rating than this. And it's like super easy to say as a caster after the fact, but like you kind of know something like this is going to happen. Like maybe you don't expect Xibalba to go this deep, right? Or maybe you don't expect some of these really deep raids.
But you're right that you do know that you are going to be raided.
Right. And on one hand, if they don't, like if Xibalba doesn't do the predictable thing, which is they've been doing all game, which is move their big armies on top of your forts, then you may have a big army land on your small counter raiding squad and it dies. But I don't think, because the thing is now like in the raiding calculus, now it's like, okay, well, it's going to be mage supported, maybe Aussie. Like, it's so much scarier to take this back when you don't know how much PD is going to be there or how much is going to come in addition to that. But like when you're defending, okay, at least I've got 20 PD on my side, or like 20 troops from 10 PD on my side, and I don't know how much he's going to bring, but I'm going to have like point buffed Vaettiheim stuff back here that's going to be able to do cool shit.
Yeah, and I would also say that, like, especially against flying nations in particular, like Xibalba, those PD troops are actually very valuable. Just because, like, you really do need enough bodies on the field in order to just get swamped.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think if they had done, like, if this turn had played out basically the same way it did, but he put up counter rating for all of Xibalba's stuff, even if he lost kind of the initiative up here with Pan and lost some of the initiative down here with Gath, I'd feel so much better about his position. So,
yeah, it is definitely a hard position to play, though. Like, anytime that you're getting coalition, you're not going to have a great time.
That's true. But the province control game is one of Vaettiheim's. Vaettiheim's probably the best in the game at province control. All the nations in the game, Vaettiheim may be number 1. You shouldn't be losing the rating war quite like this.
Yeah, I think that really is just a matter of it being a coalition, though. That he doesn't want to get caught out and lose too much stuff such that he can no longer win those set piece battles. I think that that's his consideration, basically, because you don't know what's coming for you when.
Yeah.
So unless you're going on the offensive and actually attacking into people, then sending out your stuff and just basically, let's see what goes and hits this province is very risky, especially because you can kind of allow yourself to be whittled down. If you
you're right, but
do that incorrectly.
But I don't think you have a choice. You can't say I'm just going to defend my forts. If you give up the province control game, which you're like, okay, I'm getting coalitioned, I don't want to spread my forces out, get defeated in detail. If you just go totally in that direction and you just defend forts and move a few doom stacks around, you're out of the game. Just go ahead and give up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree that like there's a nuance to it.
Yeah.
I just don't think that it's totally unreasonable to prioritize keeping your armies alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that should be priority 1 for sure. But like he stomped the shit out of this army. And maybe he was expecting twice as many Aussies and 4 times as many mages, but I think he would have still crushed that army too. So he could have taken some of these guys and controlled these 3 provinces pretty easily, you know. So
Yeah, but that's just hindsight. Like, he didn't know what was coming in each of those provinces. Maybe he needed all of those guys in order to make sure that that victory was decisive. Like, because in another world where he spreads out and Xibalba brings, twice as many mages, better support, and something goes wrong in Vaettiheim's army. Maybe there's just like disease demon spam or something that cuts into his defense force. Then suddenly you'd be looking at, oh, well, Vaettiheim just threw away a bunch of sacreds and now they're out of the game.
yeah, no, you're right. That's certainly a trade-off, but we'll see what Vaettiheim does going forward. They have to up the province defense game. Because right now they're bleeding out.
Yeah, they do now though, but
Yeah.
that's, I would say, a better problem to have than not having an army anymore.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing that's going to be interesting in all this is what's TNG going to do if Vaettiheim starts dissolving? Because like TNG kind of got into this war maybe before they were ready to, but that was because they wanted to court this like Vaettiheim alliance. Well,
Yeah, that alliance no longer even exists anymore. And Erythia is on the other side, which is even scarier.
right.
That mean, like, it's not just a matter of like, oh, Erythia themselves is going to be scary, because I don't know, we haven't seen Erythia doing that much this game, but more just that like that's one of the few people left that isn't in the Gath and Pangea alliance.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate he's pissed Erythia off by not giving him this province that Erythia felt entitled to, because he really like, okay, I mean, we can get into the, who should get what. And those are kind of like small details, though. He like the big picture is he kind of needs an ally, like against this Pangea Gath thing.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, they're also kind of running into the issue of that the alliance that they're fighting into is a stable alliance, and that just like fundamentally is hard, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you know that 2 people are going to be sticking together, whereas you can't have that same trust with the guys that you're working with, then you're always going to be at a disadvantage.
right, because like look at these guys. So income, this gold. These guys are position 1 and 2, and then it's like these guys down here are like not able to work. Like basically nobody here is working together very well. Like TNG, it's kind of a diplomatic failure on their part. Like they haven't been able to win any allies, right? They're like, hey, there's this huge axis going on that's like gonna basically knock everybody else out of the game. Why don't we do something about it?
Yeah, and one of the things that's, I mean, from an outside perspective, a little, I guess, frustrating is that people know about this, right? Like, this isn't a secret alliance or anything like that.
Right.
Like, these guys are working together. They're very open about it. It's not something that they're, like, ashamed of. Not that, I'm saying they should be or anything, but just that, like, this is a known factor. And I don't think that people are weighing how scary that is.
Yeah. You basically can't let them... I think that it's kind of one of the things that, like, for people who watched my Belarus series, I was kind of like, I tried to kind of make an alliance with Zan, who was playing TNG. And the idea was that you just basically want to do exactly what Gath and Pan have done, which is just march yourself up to be position 1 and 2 and just keep going, right? And you just gradually push everyone else out of the game. It's a really strong strategy. It may be one of the strongest strategies.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the most fun strategy. But
yeah, I was gonna say I'm hoping that it doesn't become more normal.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that it's fun as like a way to play if you're constantly working with the same folks especially if it's the same people in your alliance
Right.
frequently. But on the other hand, like it is something that like you need to just objectively recognize as a very strong strategy.
Yeah, and I mean, the way for it to not be super meta is for people to organize and punish it.
Exactly, yeah. But you basically need to recognize that just because of the durability of their alliance, that like just on a fundamental level, that is always going to be threatening, and that you need to take very drastic steps in order to fight that.
Right.
Like you need to put together essentially a coalition of your own,
right,
just in order to punish the people that are teaming up.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing. It like forces it forces a copy of itself in a way. Like having a really strong axis forces a counter axis.
Yeah, but the counter axis doesn't need to be permanent.
Right, that's true.
But you can just like get together, kill the 2 people that are teaming up, and then move on with your 1v1 wars or whatever.
Right. But this is, I think, the best way to like get really far ahead in a game is you do it with somebody else who's a good player. You think will scale about the same as you, and y'all just like are like, okay, we'll have each other's back, and you just keep doing it. The tricky part is you can't really tell that to all your neighbors. If you tell that to all your neighbors, eventually it's going to fall apart. And
you do have to kill people eventually.
And you have to kill people, and you have to be trustworthy. So if you're doing stuff like Arca was doing, where they're kind of like nickeling and diming people, you can do that to people, but you can't do it to your ally, or the thing won't work. So, gym income. Man, that's about as neck and neck as I've ever seen it.
Yeah, I mean, TNG had been so ahead for so long that we'd gotten kind of used to seeing them there at the top.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that Erythia also has the secret gem income of their wish farming go.
That's true.
We don't know how significant that is yet, though.
Yeah.
In part because their wish casters are so expensive that like they can't just like suddenly get a huge amount of them.
Yeah. Search. So this is interesting. We had Erythia talking about going on TNG, but we've seen their research curve flattening out. So this must mean it's imminent. Because...
Well, I mean, we saw them march their army down, yeah.
Well, let's see. Where is that army now?
It's still in their capital. Never mind.
But they must have evacuated these forts. They must... Oh, there's a ton here. I don't really know where they've moved stuff to. I mean, I guess they moved stuff here. They invade this way.
Into their capital.
Yeah, okay.
They're just balling up for the march south against TNG.
I mean, I don't think there's a way to protect human mages from Wind of Death. There's life after death. Okay. I'm just thinking, if he doomstacks with his mages and he gets hit by Wind of Death, he's in for some hurting.
I guess just kill the guy first, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that can be a tall order.
It doesn't work against Vaettiheim.
Yeah.
But, I mean, yeah, at least he's not fighting Vaettiheim.
Score graphs. All right, research. So we're seeing these guys flatten out. Otherwise, people mostly going ahead as per usual. This Pan may have finished research this turn because they... Oh, no, they're probably mobilizing for the Vaettiheim War because they're flattening out a little bit, too.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're actually deploying at least a significant number of mages. We don't know how much of that commitment is, but they're at least sending, something.
And strangely, Vaettiheim hasn't actually ticked up at all here. They're... I wonder if they had a research target. Maybe they were trying... Maybe the reason they didn't do the counter rating is because they had, like, demonic cleansing right on the tip of their tongue and they needed to finish it. That'd be another good reason.
That also makes sense.
Yeah. Because they were hitting the books this turn. I was expecting this one to, like, flatten out some, if anybody did.
Yeah. No, I actually think you're right. That makes total sense that they would, like, that if they needed one particular spell, then, yeah, you need to finish it.
Yeah.
Because if not now, when?
Because,
right?
I mean, demonic cleansing is going to be a game changer versus the real powers in the coalition, which are Gath and Zabalba. And we didn't see it in this current fight. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because they're not just fighting Gath, against whom it is, of course, going to be important. They're fighting Gath and Zabalba.
Yeah.
And Zabalba's whole thing, like, kind of the one thing that they've been doing very consistently are these huge demon stacks.
Yeah. Dominion, Gath number 1. Pangea number 2, TNG number 3, but pretty close. It makes sense that Gath is going up because he's probably been blood sacrificing on his border with Vaettiheim.
Yeah, in order to push the temperature. I think that he actually even mentioned that.
Yeah.
But we also just saw that.
Right.
And it makes total sense. It's kind of one of the big advantages of these primary blood nations. Vaettiheim, I don't believe, actually gets it. But for anyone that has blood sacrificed, it's massive.
It's pretty big. Zabalba climbing up. I mean, they're a little ratcheting their way up this army graph. Is this real troops?
I mean, given how many Oslotls they lost, I'm going to say they probably don't have a net positive in terms of their elite sacreds this turn.
I think their sacred count, like,
they are admittedly still cranking them. Yeah, they are.
100.
I'm not saying that like they.
Let's
they
say
are
50.
Definitely still cranking out the Oslotls in any time or any way that they can. It's
50.
just that given how many they lost just there, I think that their net change for the turn was not positive.
I think their net Aussie count is around 400 right now. Yeah. That's not many. They're honestly the between them and Erythia, I think they're the juiciest targets on the board right now.
Yeah. And in Erythia's case, we have not seen Erythia fight ever, basically, or like with a very serious mage commitment. We still, at this point in the game, have yet
there
to
was
see...
that one time against Atlantis way back when.
Right. I mean, like in terms of recently,
Yeah.
like in terms of what their actual capabilities are, how their scripts are set up, is completely blind to, or everyone is completely blind to, excuse me, to Erythia.
Yeah.
And that's kind of scary, actually. I'm never comfortable fighting against like these big astral communion nations without having a clue of what it is that they could be casting.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got no idea. So presumably we'll get to see soon enough.
Yeah, that's going to be the one cool thing about Erythia's joining, I don't want to say the wrong side of the coalition, but at least joining a war, is we're finally going to get to see what all they've been up to, but with their researching and wish farming, like where those resources going to actually be deployed.
I think that what I'll say in closing, because we're at an hour and 30 now, is...
Oh, it's been a long one.
I think,
I mean,
well, I just want to kind of riff on what you said with the wrong side of the war, which is that, like, I think the odds of Erythia having a clean and efficient war where they conquer a lot of TNG, especially because they're thinking, okay, Zabalba's going to come in. Zabalba doesn't have the resources to open up another front right now, especially in a war they're basically guaranteed to lose Doomstack fights with. So, and Pan, like, okay, maybe Pan attacks. Pan so far hasn't shown they're willing to commit the kind of things needed to actually make major progress against TNG. And if TNG can mostly evacuate some of this back area, maybe they have to keep an army down here to deal with Pan and maybe something to, I don't know. I just don't see Erythia with the stuff they have over here being able to decisively just like start conquering major parts of TNG. And if you're not going to do that, then, you know.
Yeah, I agree. They need to actually be able to beat TNG's armies. And again, like that's all up in the air just because we have no idea what Erythia is fielding. We know that TNG has some really scary stacks. Maybe Erythia can match that. We'll have to actually wait and see the battles just because we have no clue what they're fielding.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. What are your closing thoughts here as we wrap up?
Oh, I mean, we've definitely gone way longer than I had actually realized. I thought that we'd only been going for an hour, but this has been a very exciting turn.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll fade to credits here. We'll watch this as we go out here. For those of you stuck around for the end, a little eye candy.
This big battle one more time. Yeah. Man, even one of the cool things about Ozelotls to me is that even when they don't have their flying, they're basically at cavalry speed.
Yeah.
So like they get to the back really fast.
They do. All right. Thank you for joining me, Sai.
Absolutely. Thanks for hosting.
And viewers who made it to the end, thank you. See you next time.